The stars looked different from the command deck of the Draconian flagship. Commander Verak stood tall, his scaled skin reflecting the blue glow of nearby Earth as it appeared on the main view screen. His yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the small planet. It looked so fragile, so insignificant, just like the 30 other worlds the Draconian Empire had conquered before. Primitive weapons, minimal space presence, divided governments, said Lieutenant Drex, reading from his data screen. Standard conquest profile, Commander. Verak nodded. The Empire's intelligence was rarely wrong. This would be his 18th planetary conquest and possibly his easiest yet. The glory would further cement his status as the greatest military leader in Draconian history. Begin the approach sequence, Verak ordered. Maintain communication. Silence until we reach optimal threat position. 300 warships moved in perfect formation toward the blue planet. The Draconians had conquered 17 star systems using the same approach. Show overwhelming force. Demand surrender. Crush any resistance swiftly. The strategy had never failed. On Earth, in a windowless NASA communication center in Houston, John Miller nearly spilled his coffee when the alert sounded. He had been monitoring deep space signals for 15 years and had never seen anything. Like this, sir, you need to see this, he called to his supervisor. I'm picking up movement at the edge of our solar system. Hundreds of objects moving in formation. Within an hour, observatories around the world confirmed the sighting. Within 3 hours, the president had been notified. By the end of the day, the United Nations had called an emergency session. Susan Wright hadn't slept in 36 hours. As the newly appointed director of the Earth Defense Coalition, she faced an impossible task. How do you prepare for an alien invasion with no time and no experience? The objects will reach Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours, said Alan Garcia, the military strategist the government had brought in. He pointed to the projection showing hundreds of ships approaching Earth. Based on their formation and trajectory, this is not a scientific mission. Susan rubbed her tired eyes. What options do we have? Militarily? Almost none, Alan replied honestly. Our most advanced weapons wouldn't even reach them before they could react. We're looking at technology potentially centuries ahead of ours. The emergency UN session went about as well as expected. Panic, accusations, demands for individual countries to use their nuclear arsenals. Susan watched with growing frustration as hours passed with no unified response. Finally, she stepped to the podium. We don't have time for politics, she said. Her voice was quiet but firm, silencing the room. In 72 hours, those ships will be here. We need to buy time. We need to think differently. The Draconian fleet entered Earth orbit with military precision. On the command ship, Verak prepared for the moment he enjoyed most, the submission of the inferior species. Open a channel to all their communication networks, he ordered. The face that appeared on billions of screens across Earth was nightmarish to human eyes. Verak's scaled skin, sharp teeth, and vertical pupils triggered primal fears in the human brain. People of Earth, he began, his voice translated by Draconian computers. I am Commander Verak of the Draconian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. Surrender immediately and submit to Draconian authority, or face complete destruction. You have 6 hours to disarm all military facilities and prepare for our arrival. In the hastily assembled war room beneath the White House, Susan Wright watched the message with dozens of world leaders and military officials. 6 hours, she said. Not enough time to do anything meaningful. Alan Garcia had been unusually quiet. Now he spoke up. Maybe we should ask for more time. You think they'll just give it to us? Someone asked. They might, Alan said. These aliens clearly believe they're superior. Superior beings often become overconfident. They might grant a request they see as meaningless. President William Clark nodded. What do we have to lose? When the humans responded to his ultimatum, Verak was surprised. He had expected either immediate surrender or futile threats. Instead, the message was simple. A woman appeared on his screen. She looked calm despite the situation. Commander Verak, I am Susan Wright, representing Earth's unified governments. We acknowledge your power and presence. We request 48 hours to prepare our people and organize an orderly transition. Many of our citizens will be frightened, and we wish to avoid panic that might lead to unfortunate incidents. Varric's second-in-command, Krell, growled. They seek to delay. Perhaps they believe their primitive weapons can harm us if given time to prepare. Varric laughed, a harsh sound that showed his pointed teeth. Let them have their time, it will change nothing, and their fear amuses me. He turned to his communications officer. Grant their request. 48 hours. Then we begin the landing sequence. The message went out. The aliens had granted Earth additional time. In the war room, a cheer went up when Susan received the response. We have 48 hours, she announced. Now we need to use every minute. What exactly are we planning? Asked the British Prime Minister. We already know we can't fight them conventionally. Susan turned to the room. We need to think unconventionally. These aliens expect us to either surrender or fight in ways they understand. Let's do neither. Around the world, a strange thing happened. Instead of mass panic, humans began to organize. Scientists shared data across borders that had previously been enemies. Military specialists consulted with hackers, engineers talked with farmers, and new ideas emerged hour by hour. John Miller discovered something when analyzing the alien transmission. Their communication technology uses a frequency band we can actually interact with, he told Susan. It's not that different from some of our satellite systems. In rural Montana, Paul Baker, a mechanic, was studying leaked images of the alien ships. Something about their hull design reminded him of the aluminum boat he'd repaired last summer, and he had an idea. The Draconian Empire had conquered many worlds, but they had never encountered humans before. They didn't understand that humans, when faced with impossible situations, became their most creative and determined. They didn't know that humans, unlike other species they had encountered, had been imagining alien invasions for centuries through their fiction, and had already thought of countless ways to fight back. As the 48-hour deadline approached, Varric prepared his scout ships. Send teams to their major military installations, he ordered Krell. Assess their weapons and defenses before we begin the main landing. Yes, Commander, Krell replied with a salute. The scouts will provide a full report of their primitive technology. Varric watched as the first 20 scout ships departed toward Earth. He expected them to return quickly with reports of panicked humans and outdated weapons. He was confident that in a few days, Earth would be just another conquered world added to the glory of the Draconian Empire. He had no idea that humans weren't what he expected at all. Sergeant Krell stood at the bridge of his scout ship as it descended toward the area humans called North America. His mission was simple: assess military capabilities, identify key targets, and return to the fleet. The small craft moved swiftly through Earth's atmosphere, its advanced cloaking technology making it invisible to primitive human radar. Approaching the first target, reported the pilot. Large military installation detected. Below them sprawled a massive Air Force base. Krell expected to see outdated jets and basic missile systems. All conquered species had such weapons. None had ever posed a real threat to Draconian technology. Begin scan sequence, Krell ordered. Something strange happened. The ship's sensors flickered. Sir, I'm detecting unusual interference, said the technician. Something is disrupting our scanning systems, Krell hissed in irritation. Primitive equipment malfunction reset the system. But the problem grew worse. Now navigation controls were failing. The scout ship drifted, losing altitude. Emergency. Protocols, Krell shouted as warning lights flashed across the control panels. Back at NASA, John Miller watched his computer screen with amazement. The modified radio frequency he had broadcast was working. It's actually affecting their systems, he told Susan Wright over the secure line. The frequency disruption is working exactly like we thought it might. Susan could hardly believe it. The theory had been so simple. John had noticed that the alien communications used frequencies that interacted with Earth satellite systems. What if those same frequencies could be modified to interfere with their navigation? Keep it up, she said. How many of their ships are in range? We're tracking 17 scout ships that have entered Earth's atmosphere, John replied, all showing similar disruption patterns. In Montana, Paul Baker stood in his junkyard, staring at the alien scout ship that had crashed half a mile from his house. The ship wasn't large, maybe the size of a school bus, but its metal skin gleamed with an otherworldly sheen. Paul approached cautiously, carrying the homemade device he had built from spare parts. It was based on designs that had been shared online after scientists analyzed the alien transmission frequencies. He wasn't entirely sure it would work, but it was worth trying. As he got closer, a panel on the ship slid open. A reptilian figure emerged, clearly injured but still dangerous. The Draconian soldier raised a weapon. Paul activated his device. It emitted a high-pitched sound that made his own ears hurt slightly. The effect on the alien was dramatic. The creature dropped its weapon and clutched at the sides of its head, falling to its knees. Paul had been right. If their communications used those specific frequencies, their hearing might be sensitive to them as well. He approached the disabled alien, feeling both terrified and amazed that his simple idea had actually worked. On the Draconian command ship, Commander Verak was growing concerned. None of the scout ships had reported back. The communication screens remained silent. "Explain this," he demanded of his officers. "Why have we lost contact with all scout teams?" "Unknown, Commander," replied his communications officer. "We detect no large-scale weapons being used against them. No energy signatures that would suggest advanced defensive systems." "Send another wave," Verak ordered. "Double the number, and have them record everything from the moment they enter the atmosphere." Lisa Rodriguez, a linguistics professor who had been recruited by the Earth Defense Coalition, worked frantically to decode the Draconian communications. The patterns were becoming clearer to her with each transmission she intercepted. "They're sending more scouts," she told Susan. "They don't understand what happened to the first wave." Susan nodded. "Good. That means our countermeasures are working in ways they can't detect or understand." She turned to the room full of scientists, engineers, and military personnel. "But they'll adapt eventually. We need more solutions, and we need them fast." Dr. Catherine Johnson, who had been analyzing a piece of technology recovered from one of the downed scout ships, looked up from her microscope. "I think I've found something. Their materials are advanced, but they have a surprising vulnerability to certain electromagnetic pulses." The second wave of scout ships entered Earth's atmosphere. This time they were prepared for the frequency disruption that had disabled the first wave. Their systems had been recalibrated. What they weren't prepared for was the massive electromagnetic pulse that surged up from the surface as they passed over the western United States. In his mechanic's garage, now converted into an impromptu research lab, Paul Baker watched the pulse generator he had helped build. The device was a modified version of electromagnetic equipment used in junkyards to move large metal objects. Scaled up and reconfigured based on Dr. Johnson's findings, it now served a very different purpose. The pulse fired. On his radar screen, Paul watched as blips representing alien ships faltered and began to drop. "It worked," he whispered, then grabbed his radio. "Target hit. The EMP worked on the second wave." Similar reports came in from around the world. In China, engineers had developed their own countermeasures. In Russia, military scientists had discovered that simple jamming techniques, when modified to the right frequencies, confused Draconian navigation systems. In Brazil, a team had found a way to interfere with the aliens' communication network, using repurposed telecommunications equipment. One by one, the second wave of scout ships went silent. On the command ship, Verak could not believe the reports. 40 scout ships lost. No clear explanation. No sign of advanced weapons or technology that could explain such losses. "This is impossible," he growled, smashing his fist against the command console. "These humans are a pre-space flight civilization. They cannot have weapons capable of defeating our technology." "Sir," said his second officer hesitantly, "we are detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. Nothing we've seen before in previous conquests." Verak's yellow eyes narrowed. "Show me." The screen displayed energy patterns that made no sense to him. They weren't weapons as the Draconians understood them. They weren't defensive shields or combat technology. They were something else entirely. We need more information, Verak decided. Prepare a full battle group, 100 ships, heavy armaments. I want answers. As the massive battle group prepared to depart, Verak didn't know that humans around the world were watching, waiting, and continuing to innovate. In a hastily assembled lab in Washington, D.C., Megan Lewis, a 19-year-old hacker who had been recruited for her exceptional skills, had made a breakthrough. She had managed to crack a portion of the Draconian communication encryption. "I'm in," she told Susan Wright. "I can't understand their language yet, but I can see their communication patterns. And more importantly, I think I can disrupt them." Susan smiled for the first time in days. Do it. As the Draconian battle group launched from the main fleet, their communication systems suddenly filled with garbage data. Ship-to-ship coordination became impossible. Pre-programmed attack formations fell apart as conflicting orders flooded the system. The humans weren't fighting like any species the Draconians had conquered before. They weren't using traditional weapons or following expected defense protocols. They were using creativity, adaptability, and a deep understanding of the scientific principles behind Draconian technology. And the Draconians had no idea how to counter an enemy that fought this way. Commander Verak paced the command deck, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. A third of his fleet had lost communication capability. 50 scout ships gone. 20 larger battlecruisers disabled. Nothing in his 300 years of military service had prepared him for this. "Show me the human defense systems again," he demanded. The screen displayed images captured before the battle group ships went dark. There were no massive weapon platforms, no advanced defensive shields, just ordinary humans using ordinary technology in extraordinary ways. "It makes no sense," Verak muttered. "These are not weapons of war." His science officer stepped forward cautiously. "Commander, I believe I understand what is happening. The humans are not using dedicated weapons. They are adapting, taking everyday technologies and modifying them to target our specific vulnerabilities." "Impossible," Verak snapped. "No species develops countermeasures this quickly. No species we have encountered before," the science officer corrected gently. "But these humans, they think differently." In a college chemistry lab, Professor Daniel White worked with a team of students and fellow scientists. The compound they had developed was simple but effective. When the first Draconian scout ship had crashed, analysis of its sensor equipment revealed a surprising sensitivity to certain chemical combinations. "Add more copper sulfate," Daniel instructed a student. "We need the reaction to happen faster when it comes in contact with their hull material." The student carefully measured the blue crystals. "Will this really work against advanced alien technology, Professor?" Daniel nodded. "Their ships use a form of active sensing. They send out chemical receptors to analyze their surroundings. Our compound overwhelms those receptors. It's like creating sensory overload." Across the city, Dr. Katherine Johnson made her own breakthrough. The recovered piece of Draconian technology had finally revealed its secrets. "Their systems are integrated differently than ours," she explained to Susan, right over video conference. "They don't compartmentalize. Everything is connected to everything else. It makes their technology more efficient but also more vulnerable." Susan leaned closer to her screen. "Vulnerable how?" "If we can access any part of their system, we can potentially affect the whole system," Catherine said. "It's why the communication, disruption, and frequency interference has been so effective. Their ships function as single organisms, rather than collections of separate systems." Susan immediately saw the implications. "So if we can get inside even one ship?" Catherine nodded. "We might be able to affect the entire fleet." The battle for Earth continued. Draconian ships that ventured into the atmosphere faced countless, unexpected challenges. Their sensors were blinded by chemical compounds sprayed from crop dusters. Their navigation systems crashed when bombarded with modified satellite signals. Their communication networks filled with garbage data from thousands of repurposed cell towers. In Nebraska, Frank Thompson led a group of construction workers and farmers in an unusual operation. Using heavy equipment and knowledge of the land, they had prepared a trap for Draconian ground forces. "They're coming," Frank said, watching as alien dropships descended toward the fields. "Everyone ready?" The Draconian soldiers emerged from their vessels, weapons ready. They moved with military precision, scanning for threats. They found none, just empty fields and farm equipment. The trap was sprung when they reached the center of the field. Irrigation systems activated, spraying not water but a mixture developed by Professor White's team. The liquid coated the Draconians' breathing apparatus. Their armor began to malfunction. Communication devices failed, hidden in farm vehicles and buildings. Frank's team moved in with improvised weapons. The skirmish was brief. "We've captured 6 of them alive," Frank reported to the Defense Coalition, "and their ship is intact." On the Draconian command ship, Varak received the first detailed analysis of human physiology. "They are physically weaker than our warriors," his medical officer reported. "Lower bone density, less muscle mass, slower reflexes. By all measures, they should be easy to defeat in direct combat. Yet they continue to resist effectively," Varak said. "Explain." The medical officer hesitated. "It appears to be their adaptability, Commander. Their nervous systems show unusual patterns. They process new information and react to novel situations more quickly than any species we have studied. And there is something else." He paused. "They exhibit increased neural activity under threat. Unlike other species who become less effective when afraid, humans appear to become more creative, more focused." In Washington, D.C., Megan Lewis hadn't slept in 3 days. The teenage hacker had moved beyond merely disrupting Draconian communications. Now she was inside their network. "It's like they never expected anyone to try hacking them," she told Susan. "Their encryption is advanced, but once you understand the pattern, it's consistent across all their systems." Megan's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I've accessed their main tactical database. I can see their entire battle plan." Susan leaned over Megan's shoulder, watching as alien symbols transformed into English. "Can you disrupt their operations?" Megan grinned. "Better than that. I think I can feed them false information. Make them see things that aren't there." The next wave of Draconian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, expecting to encounter the same interference as before. They had adapted their systems, adjusted their frequencies, modified their sensors. They were prepared for human countermeasures. What they weren't prepared for was the complete falsification of their sensor data. Thanks to Megan's intrusion into their network, the ships detected massive energy weapons that didn't exist. They saw defensive platforms orbiting Earth that were merely digital phantoms. They registered human fleet movements that were entirely fictional. The Draconian response was predictable. They targeted these non-existent threats, wasting ammunition and exposing themselves to actual human countermeasures. On the ground, the first captured Draconian ship was yielding its secrets. Dr. Catherine Johnson worked with a team of engineers to understand its propulsion system. "It's surprisingly straightforward once you understand the principles," she explained. "Their technology is more advanced, but it follows the same physical laws as ours." Vice Admiral Elizabeth Moore, recently appointed commander of Earth's hastily assembled Space Defense Force, watched the reverse engineering process with intense interest. "How soon until we can adapt some of this to our own vessels?" "Days, not weeks," Catherine replied. "Especially their shielding technology. It's actually not that different from theoretical models our scientists developed years ago. We just lacked the right materials to implement them." In his command ship, Varak faced a decision he had never made before in his long military career: retreat. The unthinkable had happened. His fleet, the pride of the Draconian Empire, was being systematically dismantled by a species that hadn't even achieved routine spaceflight. "We must withdraw and regroup," his executive officer suggested. "Return with a larger force, better prepared for their unconventional tactics." Varak stared at the tactical display. A third of his ships were completely disabled. Another third compromised by human interference with their systems. His invasion force was crumbling hour by hour. "Request reinforcements," "From the Imperial fleet," he finally ordered. "We will hold position until they arrive." The executive officer hesitated. "Sir, the nearest reinforcements are 3 months away at maximum speed." Varek's scales darkened with anger. "Then we will hold for 3 months. I will not be defeated by primitives." What Varek didn't know was that humanity had no intention of giving the Draconians 3 months to regroup. The counterattack was already beginning. Steve Collins wiped sweat from his forehead as he examined the Draconian battle armor. Before the invasion, he had been a simple car mechanic in Detroit. Now he was part of a team studying alien technology. His particular skill was finding weaknesses in complex systems. "The power distribution is their weak point," he explained to the engineers gathered around him. "See this connection here?" He pointed to where several glowing lines met in the chest plate. "It's like a circuit breaker, but more complex. If we can overload it with an electromagnetic pulse at just the right frequency," one of the engineers nodded, "the entire suit would short circuit." Steve grinned. "Exactly, and I bet we can build something portable that could do it." 3 days later, the first armor crackers were distributed to defense forces around the world. The device looked like a modified flashlight, but when pointed at Draconian armor and activated, it caused the alien tech to shut down completely. In orbit, the situation was changing rapidly. Vice Admiral Elizabeth Moore stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, Earth's first starship. The vessel had been a space station module before the invasion. Now, equipped with engines and weapons reverse-engineered from captured Draconian ships, it was humanity's first true warship. "Status report," Moore ordered. "All systems operational," replied her second-in-command. "Shield technology at 87% efficiency. Weapons systems online." Moore nodded. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't as advanced as the Draconian ships, but it could fight. And more importantly, it could reach the alien fleet in orbit. "Begin launch sequence," she ordered. "Inform all fighter escorts that we depart in 30 minutes. Behind the Defiant, 20 smaller craft waited. They were modified spaceplanes, originally designed for orbital research. Now they carried weapons based on Draconian technology. On the Draconian command ship, alarms sounded. Varek rushed to the bridge. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Human vessels approaching, Commander," reported his tactical officer. "One large ship and multiple smaller craft." Varek stared at the screen in disbelief. "Impossible. They have no space combat capability." But the evidence was right before his eyes. Somehow, in just over a week, the humans had managed to build spacecraft capable of attacking his fleet. The vessels were crude by Draconian standards, clearly rushed into service, but they were armed and moving with purpose. "Intercept them," Varek ordered. "Show these primitives the true might of a Draconian battlecruiser." 5 Draconian warships moved to engage the human fleet. They were sleek, powerful vessels that had conquered worlds far more advanced than Earth. Their weapons could reduce cities to ash. Their shields could withstand nuclear explosions, but the humans had been studying them, learning their weaknesses, preparing. As the Draconian ships approached, the human vessels scattered in what appeared to be panic. The Draconians pursued, breaking formation to chase their targets. "They flee before us," Varek's tactical officer said with satisfaction, as all inferior species should. Varek wasn't so sure. Something felt wrong about the humans' retreat. It seemed too coordinated. His suspicion proved correct. As the Draconian ships spread out, the humans suddenly changed direction. Instead of running, they attacked, focusing all their fire on a single Draconian vessel. The Draconian shields held against the first barrage, but then something unexpected happened. The human weapons began to pulse at changing frequencies, probing for weaknesses in the shield harmonics. It was a technique the Draconians themselves used against advanced civilizations. But how did the humans know it? The answer came from within, the Draconian network itself. Megan Lewis, still connected to their systems, had found their tactical manuals, their training protocols, their battle strategies. Everything the Draconians knew about warfare was now being used against them. 1. Draconian shield failed. Human weapons tore through the ship's hull. A second ship lost engine power as a small human craft attached itself to its propulsion section and deployed what looked like modified mining charges. "They're using our own tactics," Verak whispered in shock. "How is this possible?" In Washington, Maria Hernandez, the Global Communications Director, coordinated the worldwide resistance effort. On her screen, she could see battles taking place across the planet and in orbit. The humans were no longer just defending, they were attacking. "Status update from Moscow," called one of her team members. "They've captured 3 more Draconian ground units." "Sydney reports successful deployment of the shield disruptors," said another. Maria nodded. "And the global jamming network?" "Fully operational. Draconian communications are limited to line of sight only. Their ships can't coordinate with each other unless they're in visual range." The strategy was working. By studying the aliens' technology and tactics, humans had not only defended themselves but had begun to turn the tide. Back on the Defiant, Vice Admiral Moore watched as a third Draconian ship was disabled by her fleet. "Target their command communication array," she ordered. "Let's cut this group off from the main fleet completely." Precision fire from the human vessel struck the lead Draconian ship's communications tower. The alien vessel, now deaf and blind, to commands from its fleet, began to withdraw. Moore allowed herself a small smile. The plan was working better than expected. By attacking in small, coordinated groups, the human forces were isolating and defeating Draconian ships one by one. It wasn't a strategy humans would normally use, sacrificing the protection of numbers for greater mobility, but it worked perfectly against the rigid Draconian battle doctrine. On his command ship, Verak faced a mutiny. His officers, once unquestioningly loyal, now challenged his decisions openly. "We must withdraw now," insisted his executive officer. "These humans are using our own strategies against us. They have accessed our tactical databases somehow." "Cowardice," Verak snarled. "We are Draconians. We do not retreat from primitives." "With respect, Commander," said his science officer, "these are no longer primitives. They have adapted our technology and improved upon it in ways we did not anticipate. Their learning curve is unlike anything we have encountered." Verak knew they were right, but his pride would not allow him to admit defeat. "We will regroup and attack with our remaining forces. All ships, form up on my position." But many of his ships could no longer hear his commands. Human jamming techniques had isolated large portions of the fleet, and those that could receive his orders were increasingly reluctant to follow them. In Earth's atmosphere, the battle continued to turn. Draconian ships that ventured too low were swarmed by modified fighter jets equipped with weapons that could penetrate their shields. Those that stayed in higher orbits found themselves targeted by ground-based energy weapons, built using knowledge gained from studying captured Draconian technology. President William Taylor addressed a secret session of world leaders. "1 week ago we faced extinction. Today we are pushing back." He looked around the room, meeting each leader's eyes. "But we cannot merely defend. We must end this threat once and for all." The plan he outlined was bold. Rather than simply defeating the Draconian fleet, Earth would capture it. Every ship, every piece of technology, would be claimed for humanity's benefit. And then, Taylor concluded, "We will ensure that no alien force ever threatens our world again." As the human counteroffensive gained momentum, Verak faced the unthinkable. The complete loss of his fleet to a species he had considered primitive just days earlier. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was winning. And it was doing so by turning everything the Draconians knew about warfare upside down. Commander Verak stood alone on the observation deck of his flagship. Through the transparent wall, he watched as another of his ships was captured by the humans. His mighty invasion fleet, once 300 vessels strong, was now reduced to fewer than 100 operational ships. And even those were compromised, their systems infiltrated by human hackers, their crews confused and demoralized. "Commander," his executive officer's voice came through the communication system, "the humans are broadcasting a message to our fleet. They're requesting your surrender." Verak's scales darkened with rage. Surrender? To primitives? Never. But even as he spoke, He knew his situation was hopeless. Reinforcements were still months away. His remaining ships were being picked off one by one, and most disturbing of all, the humans were not destroying his fleet. They were capturing it. In her lab beneath the Pentagon, Dr. Nicole Brown made the final adjustments to Earth's newest defensive system. For decades, scientists had theorized about energy shields that could protect the planet from asteroids or other threats. Now, using Draconian technology, that theory had become reality. Power level stable, she reported to Susan Wright, who had come to witness the activation. Shield harmonics synchronized with planetary magnetic field. Susan watched the screens with amazement. Will it work? It should, Nicole replied. The principles are sound. We've essentially created a larger version of the Draconian ship shields, but tuned to Earth-specific needs. Susan touched the scientist's shoulder. Do it. Nicole activated the system. Around the world, hundreds of transmitters powered up simultaneously. Energy surged through the network, creating an invisible barrier high in Earth's atmosphere. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the displays lit up with confirmation. The planetary shield was operational. On the Draconian command ship, alarms blared. Verak rushed to the tactical station. What is happening? He demanded. The tactical officer's voice shook with disbelief. The humans have activated some kind of planetary shield. Our ships cannot escape the atmosphere. And... He hesitated. They've somehow matched the frequency to prevent us from entering faster than light travel. Verak stared at the display in horror. His fleet was trapped. They could neither retreat to deep space nor escape using FTL drives. The humans had created a cage, and the proud Draconian fleet was now caught inside it. In the White House Situation Room, President William Taylor received the news. The shield is functioning perfectly, reported Vice Admiral Moore over the video link. No Draconian ship can escape Earth orbit, and our boarding teams are continuing to capture their vessels. What about their command ship? Taylor asked. It's surrounded, Moore replied. But Commander Verak is refusing to surrender. He's threatening to self-destruct his vessel rather than be captured. Taylor considered this. Can we capture it intact? We believe so, Moore said. Thanks to Megan Lewis's access to their systems, we've identified a way to disable their self-destruct mechanisms remotely. We're preparing to implement it now. In orbit, the final battle for the Draconian command ship began. Human vessels surrounded the massive alien flagship, their weapons trained on its key systems, but they didn't fire. Instead, they waited. Inside the Draconian network, Megan Lewis made her final move. For 2 weeks, she had explored the alien computer systems, learning their architecture, understanding their weaknesses. Now she executed the command sequence that would end the war. Throughout the Draconian command ship, systems began to shut down. Weapons powered off, shields failed. Life support remained operational, but little else. What's happening? Verak roared as his bridge plunged into darkness, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across the command deck. All systems are failing, his science officer reported, frantically checking the few displays that still functioned. It appears to be a remote override of our central computer. Impossible. Our security protocols have been compromised, the science officer finished. The humans have been inside our network for days, maybe longer. Verak's world collapsed around him. The undefeated commander, pride of the Draconian Empire, had lost to a species that didn't even have their own faster-than-light travel technology when he arrived. Human boarding teams entered the Draconian command ship unopposed. The alien crew, seeing their unstoppable commander finally defeated, offered no resistance. Verak himself was found in his private quarters, preparing a final message to the Draconian Empire. Commander Verak, said Ryan Peterson, the pilot who led the boarding team. Your ship is now under human control. Your crew is being detained. The war is over. Verak looked up at the human, seeing not a primitive being, but a worthy opponent who had outthought and outfought him at every turn. You cannot hope to stand against the full might of the Draconian Empire, Verak said. When they learn of this defeat, They will send a force 1,000 times larger than mine. Ryan smiled slightly. We're counting on it. That's why we're sending them a message. The message transmitted to the Draconian Empire was not what Verac expected. It contained no threats, no demands for surrender. Instead, it simply showed what had happened to the invasion fleet, how humans had adapted, innovated, and ultimately triumphed against supposedly superior technology and numbers. The final image in the transmission showed Earth, now surrounded by a fleet of ships. Some were original human vessels, crude but effective. Others were captured Draconian ships, already being modified and improved by human engineers. The message was clear. Earth was no longer defenseless, and humanity was now a spacefaring civilization, thanks to the Draconian Empire's failed invasion. 6 months passed. In a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Susan Wright met with President Taylor and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The first long-range scout ships are ready, she reported. Using the Draconian faster-than-light drive technology, they can reach the edge of Draconian space in 3 weeks. And their mission? Asked Taylor. Reconnaissance only, Susan replied. We need to understand more about the Empire before we decide our next steps. Taylor nodded thoughtfully. And the planetary defense shield? Fully operational and improved, said Dr. Nicole Brown, who had joined the meeting. We've incorporated several advancements based on our study of Draconian technology. No fleet currently known to us could penetrate it. The mood in the room was somber but determined. In just 6 months, humanity had advanced centuries beyond where they had been before the invasion. Earth now had a space fleet, defensive shields, and technology that would have seemed like magic a year earlier. What about our guest? Taylor asked. Susan knew he meant Verac, who was being held in a special facility. He's been cooperative mostly. I think he's still trying to understand how his invasion failed so completely. And have we learned anything useful from him? Susan nodded. We now have detailed maps of Draconian space, as well as information about other species they've encountered or conquered. It seems the Draconians themselves are feared throughout this region of the galaxy. Or at least they were. A junior officer entered the room and handed Susan a data tablet. She read it quickly, her eyes widening. Our deep space monitoring network just detected multiple faster-than-light signatures approaching the solar system, she reported. Draconian signatures. The room fell silent. Everyone had known this day would come, when the Draconian Empire would respond to the loss of their invasion fleet. But humanity was ready. In the 6 months since Verac's defeat, Earth had transformed. The primitive world the Draconians had expected to easily conquer was gone forever. In its place stood a unified planet, armed with technology equal to or better than that of the Draconian Empire, and with one crucial advantage: the creativity and adaptability that had allowed humans to defeat Verac's fleet. As the new Draconian ships approached Earth, they received a transmission. It showed a human fleet, hundreds of vessels strong, moving to intercept them. Many were former Draconian ships, now bearing Earth markings. Others were new designs created by human engineers using Draconian technology as a starting point. The mere message accompanying the image was simple. Welcome to Earth. We are prepared to discuss peaceful relations on our terms. The Draconian Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed humans would be like all the other species they had conquered. They had expected fear, panic, and disorganized resistance. What they got instead was humanity. And humanity, as the Draconians had learned at great cost, was not what anyone expected.